The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott. Thanks for listening to Common Sense for the American People, taking a day off. But my friend Jennifer Horn is here to guide you through the breaking news of the day. Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you so much, Scott, and welcome in. It is the Scott Jennings Show. I'm Jennifer Horn. Happy to be in for my friend Scott. He is traveling today. And if you haven't heard me before, I host the Morning Answer on Salem Media in Los Angeles, AM 870, The Answer, AM 590, The Answer. And what a pleasure to be in with you today. And Scott is right about one thing. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of breaking news to get to. But first, we must pay tribute to this day in history. Guys, do you know what March 11th is? It is March 11th, 2020 that we focus on. And that was the day when the world stopped. That's when the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. Can you believe that? In some ways, 6 years ago seems like nothing at all. It almost feels like a lifetime ago. Yet you still kind of see the ding-dongs driving around in their Priuses with the masks on. So there are remnants of COVID that still are existing amongst us. But think back today. How did your life change? Think about entire industries that changed. I think about the movies. People used to go to the movies on Friday and Saturday night, maybe Sunday afternoon matinee. Movie theaters took it in a bad way. You have a lot of movie theaters that have closed. Big film releases, big theatrical releases, they just don't happen like they used to. Everybody's watching things at home on their home theater system. I think about restaurants. Yes, people still go out to eat. They still go out with their families. But at the same time, how many of you use DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever it is, the Postmates, to have your food delivered now? That was a COVID era thing. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. Just when you think about how life changed for so many of us. I live in California, so of course it changed in a big way for us. They were requiring vaccine cards. They were just to go into a grocery store, go into a restaurant. I mean, ridiculousness. They shut down the beaches. They shut down churches. It was pretty significant. Depending on where you live, you know what I'm talking about. Some of you lucked out. Some of you, like in South Dakota, you lucked out. But for the rest of us in these blue states, it was a tough couple of years. So today, March 11th, 2020, as you join us, look back 6 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. But of course, we have lots more breaking news, things a little more current. And we'll start with Operation Epic Fury, the war in Iran. President Trump is out today. He's got a busy day. He's going to be going to Ohio and he's going to be going to Kentucky to talk about the economy, celebrate some of his economic policies, and talk about the year ahead because, of course, he has not forgotten it's a midterm year. But on his way, just a few moments ago, he did make a few comments about Iran. The president saying that they are doing something, that we as a country are doing something that nobody thought would happen. Take a listen. This is Cut 18.
Day 11, and as you know, we're doing something that nobody ever thought was possible to do. Our military is the best. It's the most powerful in the world, and they're hitting them very hard. This is 47 years of abuse and killing lots of people, killing and maiming lots of people. What is it, Peter?
What more do you need to do militarily for this operation to end?
More of the same, and we'll see how that all comes out. Right now, they've lost their Navy, they've lost their Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft apparatus at all, they have no radar, their leaders are gone, and we could do a lot worse to one another. We're leaving certain things that if we take them out, or we could take them out by this afternoon, in fact, within an hour, they literally would never be able to build that country back.
President Trump giving some strong words to Iran yesterday as well on Truth Social when he wrote a truth with a lot of caps, as President Trump does, to emphasize that he's really serious about something, because there were reports that they were laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz to try to block oil tankers from connecting with the rest of the world. That's what the Strait of Hormuz does. It connects the Gulf with the rest of the world. And as a result of things coming to a stop there, we've seen gas prices, oil prices over the last few days jump, although it's been amazing to see this. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but gas prices were up over $120 to $120 per barrel just yesterday. By the end of the day, they had dropped back down to about $77 per barrel. So a lot of up and down as President Trump is talking about ending this conflict, or at least nearing the end of the conflict. That seemed to build some confidence. And we also learned today that they have tapped into some of the reserves. President Trump said that the war with Iran will end soon because there's practically nothing left to target. That's built confidence in the economy. Also, releasing some of the oil from our oil reserves has helped reduce and alleviate some of the gas prices and oil prices around the globe. Iran, in the meantime, said it launched its most intense and heaviest operation since the start of the war earlier today, targeting Israel and the Gulf nations. That comes as Israel launched another wave of strikes on targets in Tehran and is also striking a suburb of Beirut in Lebanon. You know, when they say that the dream is to live in a suburb, I'm pretty sure that my dream is not to live in a suburb of Beirut. I'm just thinking there are probably other suburbs that might be a little safer than that. But in any case, the strikes from Israel continue there. Meanwhile, oil and gas prices are still a little bit high as shipping has come to a halt in the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow body of water below Iran through which 20% of the world's oil travels. Iran has begun laying mines in that waterway. On Tuesday, the U.S. military said it destroyed multiple Iranian naval ships, including 16 mine-laying vessels near the strait. Now, President Trump also speaking out about that, about the Strait of Hormuz. He says he thinks that oil companies should get back to work, cut 19.
Are you talking to CEOs of various oil companies, encouraging them to use the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I think they should. I think they should. I think they should use it. In my opinion, look, we took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. We're up to boat number 60. I didn't realize that big a Navy. I would say it was big and ineffective. But every one of their ships, just about all of their Navy is gone at the bottom of the sea.
Now, earlier today on the price of oil, Secretary Burgum, who is the Secretary of the Interior, he does a great job, and he also seems like he really loves his job. He called out a New York Times report that said that the administration was caught by surprise that the price of gasoline and oil went up. Cut 13.
I'm reading the New York Times today, and they're claiming that you guys were caught by surprise that the price of oil went up. Is that true?
Completely fake news there, obviously. But one thing I would say with President Trump, who's been focused on bringing prices down since the day he took office, affordability has been a central part of this, inheriting these high prices across the board. But whether it's energy prices, prescription drugs, this entire administration has been focused on driving down prices. And the way you do that is with supply up. And of course, under President Trump, U.S. now #1 oil producer in the world, #1 LNG producer and exporter in the world. American citizens need to know that U.S. energy, we've never been in a more dominant or secure position in the history of the country than we are right now with President Trump.
So
I think we have to probably realize that with all of the smart people, all of the experts that are around President Trump right now, that the price of oil going up because the things were shut down in the Strait of Hormuz was probably not a surprise. They probably knew that this was going to happen. They may have been surprised about how significantly things shifted up, but again, they just as quickly significantly shifted downward. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, but certainly the president is surrounded by a team of experts who are doing the job, and it seems by all accounts have been able to completely degrade the military might in Iran. We're going to talk more about that here in just a few moments. Plus, election results from yesterday in Georgia. A couple key races that we were keeping an eye on. So we've got all the latest for you. Operation Epic Fury, Election Day in America yesterday. As the Scott Jennings Show continues, it is common sense for the American people. I'm Jennifer Horn, in for Scott on the Scott Jennings Show.
Truth, justice, and the American way. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Here we are. Thanks for joining us. It is the Scott Jennings Show. I'm Jennifer Horn. Happy to be sitting in for my friend Scott today. You can find me on social media at Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, at Jennifer Horn on X, and on Truth Social. And you know, I talk about this every time I have the pleasure of sitting in, and that is that Scott and I both support a group called Child Help. And here's something that every parent needs to hear. More kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. It's truly frightening, and big tech isn't protecting them. These companies profit from screen time and engagement, and when predators slip through the cracks, well, families, they oftentimes pay the price. Child Help hears from children every day who were contacted through games and apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults pretending to be someone else. One boy reached out through Child Help's chat hotline, terrified and ashamed. An adult he met at an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. And that chat may have saved his life. That's why Child Help matters. Your donation supports life-saving programs. Every $27 can help save one child from abuse. If big tech won't protect our kids, then it is up to us. Donate today at childhelp.org/Scott. That's childhelp.org/Scott, or text the word Child Help to 94878. That's the word Child Help to 94878, and give $27 today. We appreciate you. Again, childhelp.org/Scott, or text Child Help to 94878. All right, let's get back into the news. Yesterday was election day. And kind of I would say a high profile primary election. Usually the primaries are big deals to people who are directly impacted by them, but this one had some national interest, and that's because the seat that was once held and occupied by GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia in the 14th Congressional District, well, it was up for grabs. We know that Marjorie Taylor Greene decided not to run again. I don't know what happened to her. She started hanging out on The View. Now we haven't seen much of her. I think sometimes you go to The View and the people just, I don't know what they do. They like zap your soul out of you over at The View. Those ladies are frightening. But Republican Clay Fuller, who was actually on this program, this very show last month, he got the endorsement of President Trump. He had the endorsement, it sounds like, of Scott Jennings, or at least the support. And he did pretty well for himself. He is going to face Democrat Sean Harris in a runoff to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia's 14th Congressional District. This was a former ally of President Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, and has tested the power of President Trump's endorsement and his influence still over the party, especially in a swing state like Georgia, at a time when Republicans are more than willing to split with President Trump. So we will see this runoff happen now. It's going to be Republican Clay Fuller against Democrat Sean Harris in an effort to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. So there you go. That is your update out of Georgia. Now, back to the president, who just moments ago spoke to reporters. He spent some time with Axios this morning. He did a brief interview in which he said that the war in Iran will end soon because there's practically nothing left to target. This was the president's quote, and I love it, actually. He says, little this, little that. Anytime I want to end it, it will end. That's what he said to Axios during their call this morning. Now, that's a little different than what you're hearing from Israel. In Israel, you're hearing from the defense minister, who said Wednesday the war will continue without any time limit for as long as necessary until we achieve all the objectives and decisively win the campaign. And look, I believe in this. Whether you like that President Trump went into Iran, whether you like that we took part in Operation Epic Fury, you do have to realize that once you start this, you can't just leave it, and you can't just leave it undone. I think President Trump's words are meant to say that he is going to finish the job, but he also wants to bring people confidence that it's not going to take that long, because people will start to lose interest in what they consider to be an endless war, especially if oil and gas prices stay elevated. So President Trump, I think, is trying to calm the nerves and the worries of people who might think that this is going to be ongoing. But let's be real. As much as we don't want to talk about regime change, it would be difficult to expect a different outcome having the Ayatollah's son, who's had everything apparently taken from him, his father, his wife, his mother, his son, and is also pretty injured himself, to leave him in power would be rough. Now, it could happen, especially if that means they're going to have to start from scratch with all of their military power. But it would be nice, as Bibi Netanyahu has suggested, to see the people of Iran stand up and take back their country. All right, we'll talk more about that here next. Jennifer Horn in for Scott. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
That's what we do right here. We're busting through those leftist narratives, that's for sure. Welcome back. It is Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings is out today. I'm Jennifer Horn, happy to be sitting in for him and happy to be meeting who I hope is a new friend of mine and certainly a friend of Scott's. He is an expert on what is going on right now in Iran. He is also well-versed in the terror threats that this war has opened up for us here in our country. Bill Roggio is here. He is a senior fellow at FDD. He is the editor of Long War Journal. You can give him a follow on X at Bill Roggio. And Bill, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure, Jennifer. Thanks for having me, and I'm certain we'll be friends after this.
All right, good. I told you, money back guarantee. So, you got my promise on that. Now, let's talk just broadly about what's going on in Iran, and then we can kind of dig into all of these other avenues, some of the threats and some of the impact here at home. But we heard from President Trump today basically saying that he can end the mission when he wants to end the mission, that there has been almost complete degradation of the Iranian military. We are seeing some fight back from Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, but talk to us about the effectiveness, in your mind, of Operation Epic Fury.
Well, the questions I have, right, and to assess the effectiveness, you have to understand, what is your ultimate goal? Is it regime change? And I would argue, if you want to ensure, if you want to be 100% certain that this Islamic oppressive regime, which has been at war with the United States since its inception, when it took over our embassy in 1979, held American hostages for 444 days, the Beirut bombing via its proxy Hezbollah, the thousands of Americans it's responsible for killing in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as other conflicts. If you want to ensure that a regime like that does not get nukes, you have to remove that regime. That's easier said than done. The Trump administration, they have essentially defined their objectives as more of a military objective. Mm-hmm. Degrade, erode, destroy Iran's capacity to field nuclear weapons, to develop nuclear weapons, to enrich uranium, to access that enriched uranium that uranium is already enriched, to destroy the factories and kill members that are the intellectual capabilities, the scientists, and officers who are familiar with the program. That's a more conservative goal. And that's a goal that you can achieve. And I think, look, Jennifer, I don't know. I'm not inside the Trump administration. I suspect that the Trump and his cabinet, that they want the regime to be changed, but they're not outright saying it because A, it's a very difficult prospect, mm-hmm. and B, it take a lot of resources to make that happen. It's not something you can do via air. And if it's not going to happen, they can say they achieved their political goal of degrading and destroying Iran's military and nuclear capabilities.
I think you and I probably are going to agree on this, because it's really how I feel in all of this. You can't come out and say you want regime change. You can encourage the people of Iran, as Bibi Netanyahu did this week, to say, hey, get ready. Your moment is coming. If you want to take control of your government, the time is now. I just don't know, Bill, how well organized the people of Iran are. This has been 47 years that they've been under the thumb of this regime. And so how well organized are they? That's one of the questions. Is there someone who might be waiting in the wings? They've talked about the son of the previous Shah. That could be a possibility. So you have to look at that. Who's next? But it would have been very short-sighted for the administration, I think, to come out and say they have to take out the Ayatollah. They have to have regime change, because you just don't know if that's a possibility. But I actually have to say that I don't know that it's mission accomplished unless you do get a change, because you can take away all the military stuff, you can take away their might, but the ideology to kill the West, kill Americans, and to kill the Jews is still going to exist in people that are behind the Ayatollah and now his son.
I could not agree with you more. And I use Saddam Hussein and the first Gulf War as an example. He did not have the ideological fervor, the Islamic Revolution, the true believers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basij, which is basically they're brown shirts, they're street thugs that are enforcing the oppressive regime on the Iranian people. And yet he survived a U.S. invasion, an uprising by the Shia in the south, the Kurds in the north. And it took a second invasion 12 years ago. He survived sanctions and U.S. military operations, et cetera, for 12 years. And then the U.S. had to return with another ground invasion to oust him. You're asking the right question, and it's a question I wish I had a good answer for, and I don't, which is, how well prepared are the Iranian people to overthrow the son of the Shah, right? Is he may be a good political leader, right? But what the Iranian people need is an organized military resistance because this Iranian regime is not going to give up without a fight. They have blood on their hands. They've tortured, murdered tens of thousands of their fellow countrymen, disappeared people, beaten, mutilated. They're not going to go away without a fight. So I think this is a real weakness in both the U.S. and the Israeli plan here. If you were going in thinking that you needed to overthrow this regime, and you're hoping that this regime could be overthrown, it can't be done from the outside.
Yeah.
Look, I've tracked terrorist operations against Al-Qaeda, Islamic State. We decapitated leaders and killed lots of high and mid-level fighters, and yet these organizations persist. I just don't believe we could do it via air. There needs to be a ground game.
And
That's
I think,
the Iranian.
Going into your expertise as well in terrorism, friend of our old Salem colleague here, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, he's taught me so much about the ideology that exists. And with that ideology still in place, it is going to be a real uphill climb. And I think a lot of people in the world forget that the people who are so opposed to us are doing it because they're doing it in the name of God. They think God is telling them to do all of this, and that they'll actually get glory for hurting the West and for hurting Americans. And so we have to really realize and understand the enemy that we are up against. And I'd love to know what you've heard, Bill, on that realm from some of the sleeper cells we believe have been activated here at home. You saw an ISIS-style attack in front of Mom Donnie's mansion in New York. We saw someone plow through the White House today. No one's really spoken much about that, but there have been some things that have been happening, some threats made to airplanes. You've heard that many of the administration staffers are now living like underground with lots of security around them because of the threat, not only from terrorists, but also from these cartels that the administration has gone after.
Yeah, by the way, Seb or Dr. Gorka, he was a fellow colleague at Foundation for Defense of Democracies, good friend. Yeah, I'm very concerned, and you're absolutely correct. The ideological fervor of these organizations, despite fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, in Africa, in Yemen, where we still don't understand, or at least many of our policymakers don't get the ideological fervor. They're true believers. They think that they're people that we can negotiate with, that if we just apply the right leverage, the right pressure, they'll cave, they'll fold. Maybe they're in it for money, or it's just a gang. It's more than that. That's how these groups persist. The domestic threat, it's very complicated. I haven't seen any evidence that Iran has, and we know that Iran has attempted to conduct attacks on American soil. The biggest one that I could recall is the plot to attack the Saudis in Washington, D.C. That was foiled by the FBI. There have been, as you mentioned, several incidents. There was an incident in Texas where a shooter was wearing a University of Allah sweatshirt and an Iranian flag on his T-shirt. And that, the lack of curiosity by the press in attacks like these, the hand waving that exists with that attack in New York with the IED, It's shocking. It's difficult for me to penetrate whether these are what you would call lone wolf or I never really liked these terms, but people understand them. They'll call them inspired or lone wolf attacks, where someone says, "Oh, I don't like the United States. I don't like the U.S. is attacking Iran. I'm a Muslim, so I'll launch an attack." Right? We don't know if that attack was inspired or was it directed by the Iranian. Was it a plot by the regime? We have to keep our eyes open to this. It's hard to know, and the press is not looking into it. So there's no pressure for the administration to get to the bottom of this.
Here's my advice. And by the way, I'm no Bill Roggio, but I couldn't believe that they were actually saying they were investigating that attack in Texas as terror when the guy was wearing, as you mentioned, a Property of Allah sweatshirt. Now, I don't have one of those in my wardrobe, Bill. I don't know that you do either, but I don't know how much investigating you need to do when it's written right there very clearly on his shirt. All right.
And on that point, if I wore a, University of the Vatican t-shirt, I'd be, you would be none wall-to-wall coverage of Christian terrorism in the United States.
Or I'll top you. If I had my MAGA hat on, the same thing would happen.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, look, I embedded with Iraqi troops, right?
Yeah.
Without American advisors. I'm not a guy who thinks that all Muslims want to kill me. I understand that many of them hate the people that we are fighting. But we have to look at these events. We can't just hand wave an attack like that in Texas and say, "Oh, it was just some guy and it's a coincidence that he had Property of Allah t-shirt on."
Yeah, and the Iran flag underneath. Not quite a coincidence, I don't think. All right, final couple of minutes here.
Sure what that was.
Probably not. Bill Roggio is with us, senior fellow and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. And Bill, just in our last few minutes here, what's your advice for people? Because as we are hearing more and more about perhaps some of these attacks on the homeland, what is your advice for them? What would you like to see the administration do in response to what's happening here at home, and then, of course, what's happening overseas?
Yeah, as far as the administration, it certainly has stepped up its we have to be careful about who we let into this country. I think the administration has done a decent job on, dealing with immigration, dealing with visitation here in the United States. If there is any, and I'm certain the administration is doing this, but if anyone who had remote ties, open up those old cases. For instance, the attack in Australia that happened several months ago, that individual was known to Australian officials, and they hand waved that one.
Yeah.
Anything like that, open them up. If there's any links to Iranians, those people need to be scrutinized and then scrutinized again.
I think that is such great advice.
And the American public, look, I always be vigilant in public places. Be aware of where you're going. Avoid these protests that you see out there like the plague. I have the luxury of living in, suburban, on the edge of suburban, closer to rural.
We're out of time, Bill, but keeping your eyes open is absolutely the right thing. That's the right message. Don't live in fear. Keep your eyes open. Follow him at Bill Roggio. There's more up ahead. I'm Jennifer Horn, in for Scott on The Scott Jennings Show.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is The Scott Jennings Show.
Here we are. I'm Jennifer Horn, in for Scott Jennings. It is common sense for the American people. Thanks for joining us on Salem News Channel, on the Salem Radio Network. I host the Morning Answer on Salem Radio in Los Angeles. You can tune in on AM 870, The Answer. And guys, we have a fun, national contest going on. If you'd like to come to Los Angeles to see Alex Marlowe, Chris Stegall, Larry Elder, we are sending you there. You can enter on this station's website to come and see us on March 28th. It's a great contest put on by the Salem Media Group. So you can check that out on your home station's station. How about that? All right, 32 member countries of the International Energy Alliance, an agency, unanimously agreed today to release 400 million barrels of oil from their emergency reserves. That's the largest coordinated stock release in the agency's 52-year history. The release is intended to address the supply disruptions caused by the almost total closure of the Strait of Hormuz during this Operation Epic Fury in Iran. Oil flows through the strait have fallen to less than 10% pre-conflict levels. And so the IEA said that they're going to force producers across the region to shut in or curtail their output. They are now releasing more. The oil market challenges that they are facing are unprecedented. And so today it was announced by the IEA executive director that the IEA member countries have responded with an emergency collective action of unprecedented size. So hopefully some relief will happen at the gas pump for you soon. I'll tell you what, I live in California. And we already pay at least $1.50 more per gallon than most of the country because of all of these crazy taxes and because our politicians serve at the altar of the environmentalists. But did you know that in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, this week, gas prices have gone to $7 a gallon? $7 a gallon. And of course, our governor, Gavin Newsom, is blaming President Trump for this, but it's a whole plethora of reasons, including the fact that Gavin Newsom has driven all the oil refineries out of the state. And now the fifth largest economy on the planet is foreign oil dependent, which is different than the entirety of the United States. Also, as we button up our coverage on Iran today, Senator Ted Cruz had a warning for the American people about the sleeper cells we were just talking about with Bill Roggio. This is a time when we believe there is intelligence suggesting that Iran has tried to activate sleeper cells in this country that used our open border under Biden to attack Americans. Cut 16.
Are you concerned about sleeper cells? There's been discussion of that.
Look, the risk of terrorism right now is quite high. We tragically saw in Austin, Texas, just last weekend, we saw a terrorist attack. We also saw another terrorist attack in New York City. There is a heightened danger of terrorism right now, and I will say it is particularly indefensible that Democrats have shut down the Department of Homeland Security while we are facing an enhanced terrorist risk. The Department of Homeland Security exists to guard against terrorist attacks. The danger has never been higher than right now, particularly after 4 years of open borders under Joe Biden. We know that radical Islamic terrorists entered this country, and there's a vulnerability all across this country. It is disgraceful and indefensible for the Democrats to vote party line not to fund the Department of Homeland Security right now. We need to open it up and fully fund it.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
The timing on this is not great for Democrats, and certainly they have chosen to partially shut down the government, to not fund the Department of Homeland Security because they want to make ICE pay. They want to make Kristi Noem pay. They want blood and vengeance to try to get back at what has been pretty popular for President Trump, closing down the border and supporting immigration and deportation of some of the most dangerous criminals that are here in our country. But instead of addressing that and articulating their issues with ICE, they've instead chosen to punish FEMA, the Coast Guard, and now the TSA. And we're going to talk about that next hour. The TSA, they're saying there are 3-hour lines in our nation's airports. They are underpaid. Many of them are having to take other jobs, or they're not showing up to work because they've got to make their rent checks too. They have to pay their mortgage and take care of their kids. And we are in a time when we need to be vigilant. And to have Democrats who are not willing to fund DHS under these circumstances running around, insulting President Trump for this effort instead of doing what they can to secure Americans, it's problematic. So we will talk about that in the next hour. The, of course, push on Congress to pass the SAVE Act and to refund the government, especially now when our nation is at war. I'm Jennifer Horn, in for Scott. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks for listening to Common Sense for the American people. I am taking the day off, but sitting in for me today, my friend Jennifer Horn. Jennifer, take it away.
Thanks so much, Scott. Yes, I am Jennifer Horn. Happy to be filling in for my friend, Scott Jennings. He will be back with you this week. Common Sense for the American people is on full display, however, in his absence. And I host the Morning Answer on Salem Radio in Los Angeles on AM 870, AM 590, The Answer. You can join us. Listen anywhere in the country on the AM 870, The Answer app. We would love to have you there. All right. And speaking of California, joining me today is the lead candidate. Yes, that's right. You heard it right, folks. A Republican leading all of the Democrats in the California gubernatorial race to replace Gavin Newsom. Steve Hilton joins us right now. You can give him a follow at Steve Hilton X, SteveHiltonForGovernor.com for more information. And Steve, congratulations. This new interactive poll that's out has you at 19%, and that puts you well above the next two in the race, two Democrats, Tom Steyer and Eric Swalwell, at 13% and 11% respectively. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, Jen. I think California is in the mood for some common sense, which we haven't had much of for the last, it's 16 years. For those who aren't counting, 16 years of one-party rule by the Democrats when they've run absolutely everything. The result is the biggest disaster, I would say, in American history. To take a state like California and run it into the ground with the worst results on everything that matters is quite an achievement. That's why we're going to kick them out this year.
You know, and this show is national, but what I want to say to those people who live in Oklahoma or who live in Kentucky, where the president will be later, or in Ohio, is that California politics should matter to you for a few reasons. And one is that all the crazy ideas that get rolled out across the country, they are test-driven in California. We are the petri dish for terrible ideas that reach the rest of the country. Ballot harvesting, a prime example, started in California, now impacts elections across the country. And I'd also say, Steve, that the guy you would like to replace, Gavin Newsom, is going to be or wants to be America's problem. So I say don't California my America, because Gavin Newsom wants to get into the Oval Office in a very bad way.
100%. So you used the analogy of the petri dish. My version of that, it was in my book Caliphalia that I just published last year, just before announcing my run for governor. Caliphalia, reversing the ruin of America's worst run state. And I used the analogy that the Democrats in all these years of one-party rule have turned California into the Wuhan lab of far-left extremism. They've been cooking up this ideological virus, and it's escaped. And it's leaked out of California. And it's true. I mean, ballot harvesting is a great example. All the gender extremism, the climate extremism, the insanity, all the Green New Deal, all of that started in California. And we're still suffering the consequences here. But we got to make sure that the whole country understands just what a disaster Gavin Newsom has been. I just want to quickly run through the facts are so damning. Right now, under Gavin Newsom, California has the highest poverty rate in the country, the highest unemployment rate in the country, the highest cost of living, everything the most expensive, gas, electric, water, groceries, rent, housing, everything. We've got, according to US News and World Report, we are 50th out of 50 states on opportunity. Wallet Hub, 50th out of 50 states on affordability. Chief Executive Magazine, 50th out of 50 states for business climate. And then we haven't even talked about the homelessness crisis, by far the worst in the country, crime, the disastrous public schools. It's absolutely extraordinary how much Gavin Newsom has been able to mess up everything, everywhere in California all at once, as that movie, a title once said.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is that I steal this from you all the time, but I give you credit because I am not a thief in the night. If I'm going to steal something, I actually attribute it to the man I'm stealing from, which is you, Steve Hilton. And you always say California is at the bottom of every list that you want to be on and at the top of every list that you don't want to be on. And that's what Gavin Newsom has done. You don't want him to do it to the rest of the country. Now, let's switch gears to gas prices, because there are a lot of people who are feeling a little bit squeamish today across the country because of gas prices. A lot of that has to do with what we're seeing going on in Iran. But here in California, Steve, our gas prices are up to, you mentioned in Los Angeles, there's a gas station with $8 a gallon gasoline. This isn't just the creation of Iran and Operation Epic Fury. This is liberal policy at work here.
It's exactly right. It's the climate extremism, the climate dogma that's driven up the prices. So if you just look objectively at the facts, I put about a post on this on X earlier today. In the last week or so since the Iran war began, the roughly another 50 cents extra on gas, which is obviously a temporary and short-term spike. Now, it doesn't make it any less painful, but it's obviously the direct result of that. In California, it's at least $2 extra compared to the rest of the country. That's permanent. That's the result of the Democrat policies. So just on its face, you can say that Gavin Newsom and the Democrat policies are 4 times as destructive as the Iran war has been. And of course, Gavin Newsom's pouncing on the war, saying, oh, look at this, Trump's putting up gas prices. It's laughable. We can't let him get away with it. I mean, these policies are just insane. We've got abundant oil and gas reserves in California, and yet thanks to Gavin Newsom, we are now importing oil from the Middle East. We used to produce most of the oil we use in state. Now nearly 80% is imported. Our number one provider of oil in California, crude oil, Iraq. It's just insane when we could be doing it here, but they're shutting down the industry, destroying jobs and opportunity in California, and massively increasing gas prices. All that's going to change. All that's going to change. We're going to end this climate dogma when I'm elected. We're going to have common sense. We're going to use California oil and gas, and that's how we bring prices down.
I love that. And you've made the commitment now that you'd like to bring gas prices down in California. If you are the next governor of the state of California, we hope that you are, $3 a gallon, Steve. That is some commitment when you think about the prices today. And it's not just from an economic perspective we're in a bad way. This is a national security problem when we are dependent on foreign oil in the 5th largest economy on the planet.
Exactly. I mean, just to give you a specific example, near the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, you've got Travis Air Force Base, one of the most important bases in the country. Huge, huge base for supply operations and so on. Massively important to our strategic military and defense interests. And that is supplied directly through a direct pipeline from a refinery in the Bay, in the San Francisco Bay, which is closing down. So what's going to happen? You know, that's just one small example, but a very important one of the kind of risks that we're now running thanks to this insane, ideologically driven climate crusade. By the way, that's not making any difference to the environment. That's the thing that's so infuriating about it. What difference does any of this climate nonsense make to the actual climate? California could fall off into the ocean and it would have zero impact on global temperatures. It's all that's happening is punishing, especially hardworking, working class Californians who drive their cars and trucks 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. They're the ones paying the price for this.
And everybody has to drive here because they're, as much as they love the green initiatives, they haven't set up a system of mass transit that actually works or that is safe. You and I were talking on your podcast this week, Steve, about how people are afraid to get stabbed on mass transit. So you have no choice but to drive, and they're forcing people into staying home and collecting unemployment because it's more cost effective for them than to fill up their tanks and drive to their jobs. That's a problem.
Exactly. And by the way, look at their efforts to try and replace the car. Oh, great. Another Gavin Newsom triumph. High-speed rail. It was supposed to be open. It was supposed to be open. The
no-speed rail now is what we call it.
And so it was supposed to be opened 8 years ago for $30 billion from San Francisco to LA. Now it's a small stretch in the Central Valley, Merced to Bakersfield, for $130 billion that, if you're lucky, might be open by the end of the 2030s.
I'm not holding my breath. That's for sure.
No. And by the way, the last leg, just to show how insanely incompetent these people are, the last leg of their high-speed rail business plan says, actually, from Bakersfield to LA, it's going to be a bus.
Yeah.
Which we have now. It's called Greyhound.
They can't get through the mountains. Steve Hilton, this is why we love you. Help him out if you can. Anywhere across the country. Steve Hilton for governor.com. Steve Hilton, thank you. I'm Jennifer Horn. More of The Scott Jennings Show next.
The one thing you can count on here on this show, we tell the truth. You can count on it. It's The Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks for joining us. It is The Scott Jennings Show, common sense for the American people. I'm Jennifer Horn, sitting in for Scott today. He'll be back this week. And guys, hot off the presses, this is how great our staff is around here. I get real paper news stories delivered to me with some very terrible news. Iran plotting drone attack on California. Don't we have enough problems? Please. As retaliation for the war. This is a new FBI alert. The FBI has warned police departments in California in recent days that Iran could retaliate for American attacks by launching drones at the West Coast. We already have Nancy Pelosi. We have Kamala Harris. We have Gavin Newsom. I think we have suffered enough. Apparently not for Iran. According to reports, the FBI recently acquired information that as of early February 2026, Iran allegedly aspired to conduct a surprise attack using unmanned aerial vehicles from an unidentified vessel off the coast of the United States homeland, specifically against unspecified targets in California, in the event that the U.S. conducted strikes against Iran. So they thought this could be coming, and they thought, we were going to get our drones ready if it happens. This alert was distributed at the end of February, just coming to light today. We don't know exactly the method, the timing, the target, the perpetrators. We don't know a lot. We just know they had the idea. The warning, of course, came as the Trump administration launched its ongoing assault into Iran. Iran has been retaliating with these drone strikes against targets throughout the Middle East. They have this drone technology thanks to the capable hands of the Russians. And apparently Ukraine, this is another story that had come out, Ukraine had offered, I guess they came up with a PowerPoint presentation or something. They wanted to sell the information to us so that we could fight these drones because they're a little tricky, tricky to detect. But of course they wanted cash for it. You know, Ukraine doesn't like anything for free. So I believe we passed on that offer, and now back again, Ukraine says, yeah, we can teach you how to deal with these drones, these Russian drones, but, it's going to cost you. So the FBI in Los Angeles has declined to comment. The White House has declined to comment as of yet. So we haven't heard anything. U.S. intelligence officials have said that they are growing concerned in recent months about expanding the use of drones by Mexican drug cartels. Because remember, we've also kind of tweaked the drug cartels. We've been cracking down on them pretty hard. We just got one of their guys, what was his name, El Mencho? He apparently, he decapitated people and cannibalism. Kind of weird. Anyway, we just got him. He sounded like a bad guy. But we've been going after cartels in Mexico and in South America. So now, apparently, to get back at us, there is a chance that they have drone technology that could be used to attack American forces and personnel near the border. So this report, not just involving Iran, but now the cartels, an uncorroborated report suggested that unidentified Mexican cartel leaders had authorized attacks using drones carrying explosives against U.S. law enforcement and military personnel along the U.S.-Mexico border. This is according to a bulletin published by ABC News back in September of 2025. This type of attack, they said, against U.S. personnel or interests inside the U.S. would be unprecedented, but exemplifies a plausible scenario. So it hasn't happened, but it could. The former head of intelligence for the Department of Homeland Security, John Cohen, said he's concerned about the possibility of drone warfare coming from both the Pacific and Mexico. Well, isn't that just great? One more thing for us to worry about here. They know that Iran has an extensive presence in Mexico and South America. They have relationships, they have drones, and now they have the incentive to conduct the attacks. The FBI, they said, this is John Cohen, is smart for putting the warning out so that the state and locals can be better able to prepare and respond to these types of threats. Information like this, they said, is critically important for law enforcement. So there you have it. We don't have the specifics, but we do have the warning. And of course, let it be said, we've already said it once during the program, but let it be said again. The Department of Homeland Security, which could be defending the homeland and keeping us secure, is now shut down, at least partially unfunded, because Democrats have decided to make this the ground that they die on because they don't like ICE. Instead of figuring out how they could legislatively fix the problem, they've instead just said, nope, we're going to shut it down. It's not great. And every Democrat in Congress needs to be called right now to reopen the government, given these latest threats that have been in existence, but we're finding out about right now. All right, we've got more up ahead. We're going to talk about the SAVE Act. Jennifer Horn in for Scott. It's a Scott Jennings Show.
News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Here we are. Thanks for joining us. It is the Scott Jennings Show, common sense for the American people. I'm Jennifer Horn. Happy to be sitting in for Scott. He'll be back this week. And you can give me a follow in the meantime at Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, at Jennifer Horn on X, and on Truth Social. And you can always follow the Scott Jennings Show at Jennings Show on X. And speaking of Scott, you know, he and I are taking a little vacation together. Don't worry, everything is on the up and up. Mike Gallagher's coming along too, and we want you to be there as well. Salem Media's Gulf of America cruise is coming, guys. Now, I have done 2 Salem trips in the past 2 years. We've been to Alaska twice with patriots just like you, and I am telling you, we have so much fun. Life-changing travel. We get to see beautiful, inspirational places. I mean, you see God's creation, you're like, wow. It gets you out of the day-to-day, out of the norm, and into a scenario where you're seeing beautiful things and you're getting inspired by like-minded patriots. So this time, we're not going to Alaska. Oh no, throw away your parkas and get out your bathing suit. We are going to the Gulf of America. We're going to Half Moon Cay in the Bahamas. We're going to Ocho Rios in Jamaica, Mon. How about that? We're going to Georgetown in the Cayman Islands and Cozumel, Mexico. Does that sound heavenly? And we're going November 14th through the 21st. And let me tell you what's really unique about these trips. Not only do you get the cruise experience, but you are going aboard Holland America, which is 5-star luxury cruising. And our friends over at Inspiration Travel put this on, so you get to travel like the VIP you are. Best opportunities for dining, best opportunities for excursions. This Eurodam ship that we're going to be on, I have traveled on it before. It's the perfect size. Not too crowded, not too small. Best spa, casino, shows, entertainment, and then each and every day that we are aboard this cruise, we have activities set up just for our Salem Media group. That means book signings, meet and greets, Q&As, speeches, and a whole lot of fun. Truly, when I say you will laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel inspired, you really will. And this is perfect whether you are a single traveler because you're going to have built-in friends, or if you are bringing an entire group. It's totally customizable, and we want you to be with us for the Salem Media Gulf of America cruise, celebrating America's 250th birthday. So you know we will do it right with Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, and yours truly, Jennifer Horn. Text the word cruise right now to 94878. That's the word cruise to 94878. Or if you want to see everything online, inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise. That's inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise, or you can call 855-565-5519, 855-565-5519. I can't wait to travel with all of you. It is going to be a lot of fun. And I think, you know what? Maybe we can get Scott Jennings to sing karaoke. I think I can make it happen. I think we could get him to do it. What would be his song? Guys, what do you think? He's kind of a rock and roll guy, I think. So maybe we'll have to find some kind of Mr. Blue Sky. How about that? There you go. We'll get something great for him. I promise. We'll have a great time. So inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise. All right. Earlier today, we mentioned President Trump is picking up on his economic agenda. He is going across the country to sell his economic successes. Why? Because Democrats have created this issue of affordability, saying that President Trump hasn't kept in mind the average American who is struggling to get by. Now, if you look at the evidence, that's not true. Inflation is down. Jobs are up, government jobs are shrinking, and the stock market is hitting all-time highs. You also have gas prices, which are typically down. I know we've seen a spike, but that is temporary. We've seen the cost of goods and services start to go in the right direction. More people are able to afford homes. The interest rates are going down and will continue to do so this year. So President Trump has a lot to celebrate, but he also has to convince people that this is what he's doing for them and that there is more to come. In fact, I got to tell you this story. I don't know how many of you have done your taxes yet, but a close family member of mine said, "You will not believe this, Jen." He said, because of the no tax on Social Security, he went from getting typically like a $6,000 refund to getting $11,000 back from the government this year. Almost double a refund. And he's putting that to use to pay off debt and to get himself in a better financial situation. I'm curious to know how many of you have noticed that as well as you've done your taxes. I have not done mine yet, but it's coming. It'll happen. It's going to happen. We still have plenty of time. What do we have? Like a month. We've plenty of time here. So President Trump, boarding the plane to go to Kentucky and Ohio today, talked about what he thinks is Congress's most important thing that they can do. And I agree with him. That's the Save America Act, which would ensure voter ID in all federal elections. Democrats have a whole lot of arguments. We'll go through those. But first, the president cut 17. Cut 17?
Is Senator Thune listening to you when you say you want to pass the Save America Act? He says there aren't the votes to do it right now. What's your response?
Well, he's got to be a leader. You know, if he's a leader, he's got to get him. It's the most popular bill I've ever seen put before Congress. And it's voter ID and it's voter. You have to be able to be a citizen to vote. It's called citizenship. And we're also adding in no men playing in women's sports, no transgender mutilization of our children, and no mail-in ballots, fake mail-in ballots. We have none of that, except in the case of the military, etc. I would say it is the Save America Act. It's the most popular bill I think I've ever put before Congress.
All right, so the Save America Act, it would require photo ID before you get your ballot, right? And to register yourself to vote. This seems really common sense. This isn't even a political issue. Democrats and Republicans all support the idea that would secure our elections, this rule that would secure our elections. In fact, 80% of the country is behind some form of voter identification. And here in California, we actually have a voter ID initiative that's going on our ballot for local and state elections in the fall. And do you know that even in crazy far left California, 70% of the electorate supports voter ID? So these are huge numbers. So why is this such a problem for Democrats and Republicans to get this passed? Well, Democrats are really the ones who are standing up against this. They don't want it. They've come up with a whole plethora of reasons. And there's some doozies. They're saying that, and these are my favorite because they're just the most insulting. They're saying that people of color don't know how to get an ID, so they wouldn't be allowed to vote. And then us poor, silly women who get married and change our names, that women would not be able to vote, even though this is a process that every woman who gets married has had to do. Go to the DMV, change your name. I just had to go get a real ID to renew my license. And guess what? I had to show up there with the passport and another form of identification. So this idea that people are unable to, because of their gender or their skin color, figure out how to get an ID to show up to vote, give me a break. It's insulting. And truly, when you fight that hard, that makes me think that you don't want to pass this because somehow you benefit from having this in place. So maybe Democrats like having unsecured elections. But I have to say Republicans have to do better too. John Thune has been kind of all over the place, saying he doesn't have the votes to pass the SAVE Act. President Trump said he's not going to sign any other legislation except for government reopening, refunding of DHS, without the SAVE Act. Now, here's a piece of the puzzle that maybe some of you haven't started to consider yet. Maybe you have. Senator John Cornyn, who is in Republican leadership in the Senate, he is in a tight runoff race now with the MAGA candidate, the AG of Texas, Ken Paxton. They're headed to a Republican runoff in June after Election Day last week. President Trump said that he didn't want to see Republicans waste their resources on a Republican runoff, and that if he chose to endorse one of them, the other should drop out of the race. Now, MAGA wants Trump to endorse Ken Paxton and dump John Cornyn. That's what I want in my heart. But I'll tell you strategically, I think it would be very unlikely that President Trump not give his endorsement to John Cornyn. So I think that there's a little deal happening where President Trump has gone to Cornyn and said, you and Thune, get these guys together, you hold a vote on the SAVE Act, and then you'll get my endorsement, and Paxton will have to drop out of the race. You'll be on your path to re-election if you can beat James Tellerico, the Democrat, in November. Well, maybe there is something to that little conspiracy that I cooked up in my head, because Senator John Cornyn has been all over the place. He just abruptly decided to support eliminating the filibuster to pass President Trump's agenda, the Save America Act, within hours of a newspaper report. So he's been back and forth on what to do about this filibuster. He said we should do anything we can. Now he's looking at flip-flopping back. Look, one thing that President Trump has taught the Republican Party is that we will succeed if we stop playing defense and start playing offense. President Trump was born without a shame bone. Republicans have spent the last 25, 30 years doing what is right and losing. We need to start winning. Our country is at stake. And as much as I think the old days of protecting the filibuster, it was a good idea, and probably 2 years ago, if we had this conversation, I would say, yes, we need to do everything we can to protect the filibuster. But things have changed. And if Democrats take control of the Senate, what do you think they're going to do on day one? It won't even be a conversation. They'll end the filibuster. They will pass through everything that they have with a simple majority. And we will be sitting there scratching our head, wondering how Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. just became a state. It will happen. There's no doubt in my mind. I think the message today to Senate Republicans is, well, I appreciate you taking into account the way things used to be. Politics has changed. We are more divided than ever, and we have a country to save. We have to get to work on doing just that. And one of the ways that we can do it is by requiring voter identification. It is simple. It is supported by the masses in huge numbers. There's no argument from the people in the middle of the country. There's no argument even in California or New York. By and large, everybody supports this except for the politicians. So now is the time to shake up those politicians who are holding you hostage, shake up the old rules that are holding you hostage, and get to work for the American people. It's time. Senator Cornyn needs to hear this message. No more flip-flopping from him. Support the president's agenda. Get your endorsement. And Senator Thune better stop making excuses, find a backbone, and start making deals with enough of the people that he needs to pass this legislation through. It's what President Trump is asking for. It's what the American people want, and it's what is their duty to provide to us. I'm Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Know how to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
We are always smiling. Happy warriors here at the Scott Jennings Show. That is something that I think you can identify with as well. To win the war, we have to smile during the fight. And that's why I'm so glad to be here today. I'm Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings. You can give him a follow at Jennings Show. Make sure you are following the podcast and all of the fun that you never want to miss here on the program. Okay, celebrity time. Gene Simmons from the band Kiss has gotten some attention and made some news because he has criticized some celebrities that seem to get a little too crazy political. And they know who they are. You know who they are. Celebrities who just can't help but tell you what they think because they just think you need to know. Now, there are a lot of people, I think it was Laura Ingraham, who had the book Shut Up and Dribble. And I think there's a lot of people that have different feelings about that. You have people who are free speech advocates like me that say, okay, people get to say what they want to say. But then there's also just being smart. I had the great pleasure of being friends with Ed McMahon, who was the most famous and best second banana sidekick in history, I think. He sat with Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show almost every night. And one of the things, I think I knew what Ed McMahon's politics were. But he never told anybody about it. And the reason he said that is that people turn to entertainment. People turn to The Tonight Show to forget their troubles. And why would I want, he said this directly to me, why would I want to alienate half of the country? And that's always stuck with me. That's not about free speech. That's just about smart business. And it's also about understanding your audience. The world right now is a tense and crazy place. Do we need to have people that we look to make us laugh or to make us cry or to make us feel something? Artists, do we need to look at them to tell us what to think politically? I say no. I think that's what's wrong with late night comedy now. I love to laugh. I love comedians. I'll laugh at jokes that are about my side of the political aisle or not, as long as they are funny. But today's crop of late night shows are all just, it's political punditry. At least when you watch Gutfeld on Fox News, you know what you're going to get because it's political, but it's comedy. And that's why I think he does so well, because you know what you're going to get. There's so many people who want to tune in to Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon and just get a comedy and a late night show and see celebrity guests and be done with it and go to bed. Well, Gene Simmons, the lead singer of Kiss, has chimed in on this phenomenon of celebrities who just can't keep quiet. Take a listen.
I know right now Ben Stiller is calling out the president, saying he doesn't want him to use his movie clips for war propaganda. I mean, it sounds like a lot of people are kind of, criticizing Trump, like Hollywood right now, over this war thing. Is that fair?
Yeah, because everybody in the world should listen to what actors and comedians say, because they're so qualified. Basically, shut the up. Do your art and shut up. Nobody's interested in your opinions. That includes me, who I vote for, who I like. Who the do you think you are? People in America work hard for their living, and they don't want to be lectured to by people who live in mansions and drive Rolls Royces. It's time for everybody in the entertainment industry to shut their pie hole and just do your art. Nobody cares what you think. I don't.
Okay.
What will Mark Ruffalo, however the he pronounces his
Mark
name.
Ruffalo, yeah.
Well, good. Ruffalo, Buffalo. What does Mark think about politics? I don't care.
So you think celebrities should stay out of the politic talk?
Well, we both agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
Or go to Kylie Jenner and ask her what she thinks of the war so far.
Can we give that guy a round of applause? First, I love the way he just lays it out. Anybody that can put the word pie hole into their sentence, I'm going to be a fan. I think that's pretty good. And he's right. So I just went because I thought there's so many examples of celebrities who are overly political. What does Google have to say about who those celebrities are? You ready for the list? Donald Trump, James Woods, Russell Brand, Charlton Heston, and Amber Rose. Now, what do those people all have in common? They're all conservatives. They put two liberals on this list, Cardi B and Robert De Niro. This is what's so crazy, is that conservatives like Charlton Heston and Amber Rose are on here, but you don't have Mark Ruffalo, whatever you have. You don't have Bruce Springsteen. It's funny how there is just this double standard. It exists. But I go back to my original point and what Gene Simmons is saying. Who cares what these guys think? If they want to speak, fine, let them speak. But just remember, your audience wants to be entertained, guys. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Scott will be back tomorrow. I'm Jennifer Horn. Give me a follow, Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook. It's the Scott Jennings Show.